Yeah. Let's share my screen.
I'll wait till your screen share goes up, then I'll admit everyone.
Okay.
Alrighty.
So,
Ah.
whoops, that's the wrong one. Okay. All right. All right, everybody.
Hey.
Hi, everybody. So, hey, all right. I would like to welcome everybody to our Clayton Library, fourth Friday, Clayton Library Presents Lecture Series. I'm Sue Kaufman. I'm the manager of the Clayton Library, and I am really glad you guys are here. So thank you all for coming. So let's do a little housekeeping. Well, we're in Texas, in Houston. So as we have the chat, what I'd like to do is just for fun. Why doesn't everybody maybe say hello where they're from, so we can see where everybody is coming from, and we can then, of course, strut our little peacock feathers for how many people we have visiting from other places. So in the chat, that would be great. And just a couple other housekeeping things. I would like to remind everybody to make sure that your microphones are off. And during the session and beginning now, if you would turn your cameras off, so not as to distract anybody, that would be great too during the presentation. And then also, if you would put your questions during the presentation in chat, because then what we will do is along with, in a minute, I'll introduce everybody, but we are moderating these sessions. And so at the end of the presentation, we will go into the chat and pull up questions. So that's really wonderful. So this is our presentation. We're going to have Franklin Carter Smith do a presentation, but I would like to mention that the handouts for today's presentation can be found at that website, houstonlibrary.org/Clayton. And what you will get is on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see where you can go into events and exhibits. And when that page opens, you will see that you scroll down and you can see right there where I have on the screen, you'll see the red arrow. You will find the handouts from this presentation and our other presentations that we have uploaded so far. But I would also like to mention, with those green arrows, you can click on the Houston Public Library calendar of events, and then also the Clayton Library Friends calendar of events to see our upcoming presentations. And can I tell you, in October, we've got some really good upcoming presentations. We are doing presentations every single Friday in October to celebrate Family History Month. And at the end of this presentation, my colleague will put up the slide that will give you the information of who's coming. You can also sign up for our email newsletter, which is different from the Clayton Library Friends newsletter, in case you get that. We do a quarterly newsletter called the Clayton Crier, and then also a monthly newsletter, which is our Clayton Extra, which highlights our programming. Our Crier gives you information about collections, some helpful hints for research. So there are those two. I would like to thank our team here at the Houston Public Library for helping us to do these Friday presentations. They're really great. You can see on the screen we have our technology side at Clayton, Mitch Clendenning. Mitch, wave. Mitch will be carrying the presentation at the end. And then on the organization side, we have Justin Bogart, who we would not be able to do this without his guidance and everything else. He and Mitch, I would not be able to be here. We would really be floundering around like a bunch of fish on the beach. So enough of that and enough of me. I am going to introduce my colleague and my friend, Franklin Carter Smith. Franklin Carter Smith has 40 years of research experience, and he is a young, fine specimen and has an inordinate amount of knowledge and been with Clayton 7 years. He's been here at Clayton for 7 years. And at Clayton, he is a subject matter expert on African American research with an emphasis on the enslavement era research. Frank also has a BA from Alcorn State University in Mississippi. He also has a Doctor of Jurisprudence from the University of Houston Law Center, and he is the co-author with Emily Kroom of A Genealogist's Guide to Discovering Your African American Ancestors. So I know that you'll all enjoy Franklin's presentation. If you've seen one, you are in for the treat that you know as Franklin. If you haven't seen one of Franklin's presentations, you are in for a treat from Franklin. So Franklin, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and share yours. And I'm going to mute myself and everyone enjoy.
Okay, now click. Okay, y'all see it now? Let me get it in. Okay. Everybody see the screen?
Yeah, you're okay. I can see it.
Okay, okay. All right. Good afternoon. Good morning if we got some West Coast people, maybe. My name is Franklin Smith, as Sue said, and this is genealogy and family history is my passion. I've been doing this so long, I don't know how to do anything else, to be honest with you. And over the years, you know, working at a genealogy library, I encountered a lot of people who came in who seemed to be a little overwhelmed by the process of how to get started. And of course, normally what we do is just kind of start to rotely just give them different record types, start with yourself, what you want to do these records, you want to do those records. And I could see them just sort of glaze over, you know, do I really want to do this? So I was sitting and thinking, and I said, well, maybe there's a better way of doing this, and a way that maybe I can make it more intuitive and make it easier to understand and relate to. And so there came from whence came my presentation, Thinking Like a Genealogist, Let Your Five Senses Guide You. The objective of this presentation is to suggest a genealogical research strategy that simplifies and demystifies the process and makes it more intuitive and user-friendly. I'm not trying to dumb it down, so I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to take a subject that's very complex and dumbing it down, because I'm not. I'm just, for beginners, I want you to know there is a more intuitive way to do this that will make it a little more user-friendly. Now, the first thing you want to do is to start with your pedigree chart. You can download these from the internet, and what it does is gives us a map when you come to us to help us get you started. And now that you can't come to us, at least it gives you a map of what you know, what you don't know, where you plan on heading, what it is you need to find out, and you know, the information that you need to gather. And it keeps you focused on, especially if you're researching a particular line, what you've learned, you want to put into this document so that you can keep yourself updated. That's the main thing you want to do. Now, of course, I'm going to be a little shameless here and tell you need to find a good research guide. So I'm going to suggest for African Americans my book that I co-authored with Emily Kroom, A Genealogy Guide to Discovering Your African American Ancestors. This is the same book by different publishers. The one with my grandmother, the two ladies sitting on the step is my grandmother, which I'm so proud of. The darker lady, and the other lady is her sister, who I knew. I didn't know my grandmother. And the guy in the military uniform is their brother. That's the more recent publication from the Genealogical Publishing Company. But it's the same book as the other one with the other family sitting on the cover. In fact, you can download the older version from the Internet Archive if you maybe don't want to buy it, but want to, before buying it, see what it's like. You can download it. It is downloadable as a checkout on Internet Archives. So you want to find a good research guide that will kind of help you and give you some guidance along the way. Now, when we get into the census, and I know y'all gonna have some questions about, oh my God, how is he gonna really do this with census? How does this really work? What has he come up with? Well, the first thing is pretty, I mean, most people will understand that, the sense of hearing. And what you wanna do is listen, really listen. You wanna talk to anyone who will talk to you. You want to talk. At one point, it was always, you know, when I was started researching, was the elders, my mother, her sisters, her brothers. You know, I may have had a great aunt living or uncle living at that time, but now I've become the family elder. So I'm the one that people will be talking to try to find out, you know, what information I have on the family and what I may know. So you want to always talk. An oral history and tradition is very important in the hearing aspect, because you're going to listen to those stories that people are telling. You want to hear what it is that they're saying. You want to listen to everything that they have to say, especially family elders. Now, you want to listen with a critical ear, hear what's said and not said, but don't contradict them, please. That's the best way to end the conversation. If you start challenging them, they will shut up and won't talk to you forever. So you let them speak, you know, don't go in, well, you know, that's not what mama said. That's not what, damn, mama didn't tell me that, or grandma didn't tell me that. Let them say what they have to say. You want to use general questioning and be patient. And you want to go with the what, who, when, where, and why questions. Now, the why one is, I put in here, and it's in the handout if you want to get the handout, is why all the secrecy? Don't ask them that, ask yourself that. Why all the secrecy? And try to find out what it is that's the secret that nobody wants to talk about. Now, sometimes if you get them talking, they will automatically just kind of open up and start telling you things that they may not intend to tell you. But that, you know, of all the W's, that is the one I say, don't, and I've heard people come in and say, well, I asked Mama, why all this secrecy? Why won't nobody talk? Well, you definitely not gonna get them to talk then. But you want to ask, you know, where they live, went to school, were buried, when they were born, married, died, who in the family, what occupations were they, what do they know about them, the extended family, the neighbors, who to talk to, who has the documents, the family Bibles, that kind of thing. Okay, now we come to something that I know y'all probably wonder, how is he going to get smell into this? How is he going to link smell to genealogy? Well, it's very fundamental, the smell test. We all have heard some oral stories and stuff that just, you know, that we've been told over the years that just don't pass the smells test. It's just something that's just not right about that. So, and like I said, mostly that tends to surround oral history and tradition, but also sometimes in documents you can find information that just doesn't, you know, like on census records, well, they're listing them as a boarder or a servant, but that does not look right. You know, I think that person has to be related to the family. So you're wanting to always question. If it doesn't pass the smell test, then you need to do your research. Is the information accurate to time and place? You know, try as much as possible to make the, you know, research the information and to determine whether it is accurate, whether the oral tradition is accurate. Now with African Americans, and I can speak from that tradition myself, it's the Native American ancestor. When I do African American programs, I always will ask at the beginning of the program, how many of you have oral tradition that your ancestors had, you have Native American ancestry or Native American folklore or history in your family. And generally about half to 2/3 of the people will respond. positively. And I say, well, you know, just think about this now. I mean, of all the black people here, say half to three quarters of y'all say you have history or oral tradition of Native American ancestry. There weren't that many Native Americans to go around to be fathering all of our great grandmothers or great grandmothers. And my family, it was no different. And on my father's side and my mother's side. And this is a story from my father's side. This is my great grandma, Georgia Dotson Davis. She was born in 1872. She died in 1942. My mother always said she looks like, you know, she has Indian in her. And of course, later I would learn that, unfortunately, we had this picture, that there was oral tradition and that her grandmother was Native American. And once I started researching, I determined that her grandmother had been enslaved and sold out of Virginia. She was born about 1830 and sold from Virginia to Mississippi. Now, these were her parents, my second great grandparents, Henry and Angeline Dotson. Now, the one thing I was most proud about Henry was he was a mulatto. Basically, he was 3/4 white. Was that he found and married the blackest woman in the county. I was extremely proud of him. He was never color conscious. Like, you know, he could have left Mississippi and passed if he chose to, but he stayed and he raised, I think it was about 10, 11 children. Now, this was where I really realized, you know, that this is the key to this story, was this picture. This is the picture of Henry's slaveholder father, William Dotson. And we have this picture in the family. And the picture hung at my great grandmother's, my great aunt's home until, you know, they passed. And I remember going one time and asking her, well, who is this, you know, and I was a child, so I knew not to go much further than, hey, Sarah, who is this? She said, oh, that's my granddaddy, William Dotson. Now, to me, that was something, okay, how can this be her grandfather? And of course, once I started doing research and I grew up to understand and realize what was, you know, the true nature of slavery and stuff, I understood it. And if you look at Georgia and William, is as if he just spit her out. She is the spitting image of him. But because many times African Americans don't want to talk about the slavery aspect, they don't like to tell the story of what actually happened. So it becomes a Native American thing. And African Americans have been claiming Native American ancestry long before it became popular. And I'm not saying that there aren't cases in where that's true in family folklore, because even in the slave narratives, the formerly enslaved who completed slave narratives said that their grandparent or grandmother may have been, was Indian. So it's very true. But again, you have to research these as to time and place. Where were your ancestors living? What time were they there? What Native Americans were there? So you have to make sure it passes the smell test. The next sense that you'll encounter is the touch sense. You want to get your hands on everything within reach and beyond. You want to get your hands on as many documents, get into as many databases, as many books as you can find. Now, I basically divided these up into 3 different types of touching the different type of categories of documents. The first one was family collections. Okay, who has the Bibles, the papers, the obituaries, the pictures, and the documents? And this sometimes can be learned while you're doing your talking to folks. My mother was a collector, she wasn't a hoarder. There is a difference. She was a collector of obituaries and pictures and documents. Now, the second category is online research. And a lot of that is what we're having to do today because of COVID-19. And so there you will be accessing databases, digital libraries, and Google is your friend. Google is your friend when you're doing genealogy research. In fact, there is a book on how to use Google for genealogy research. So some of the online research databases and digital libraries or Family Search, which is free, of course. It's all it requires is a username, password, and a email address. And they have many millions of records there that are free. And it is so underutilized. Then there's the Clayton, there's Ancestry.com, MyHeritage, Fold3, and newspaper databases. Now, Ancestry is now free at Clayton, for instance, and maybe it's of some of your local libraries also through December at Clayton. I don't know about other localities, but they have, if you have a library card and some type of password or PIN number, you need to check with your local library. You can access Ancestry for free. And for instance, with the Houston Public Library, you can get an online card, create a PIN number, and use that to access Ancestry. Some of these databases you have to be in the library to use, but you'd have to go to just consult your local library to find out which ones are available. There are digital libraries such as Internet Archives and HoneyTrust that will have some census records, for instance. They'll have lots of different genealogy information that you can access there, and these are free. Now, some of them may give you only brief snippets, but I know Internet Archives, everything, as I said, my book is downloadable as a checkout from the Internet Archives, and it's free. The third group of documents that you really need to get your hands on is the print and microprint. That's actual books and microfilm, microfiche. And for that, you mainly have to go to a designated library to access those if they haven't been digitized. For instance, the Family History Library in Salt Lake City has digitized a lot of information and have it on microfilm, but believe it or not, there is some information that they have not digitized. So sometimes you may have to venture out to a repository to see how much they actually have, or what they have that some of the other sites don't have. Now I want to kind of touch on the first category I did was family collections. And by just researching and talking to my own family, my mother primarily, and her sisters, her siblings, and anybody else that I could find that might know anything, I came up with some really great information. And you got to ask these people, especially in the case of a family Bible or something, did anybody have was there a family Bible? For years I went without knowing there was my grandfather had a family Bible until it came up in discussion with my aunt and my mother. Now this first document here, Willis Smith's A Bit, January 1958, was written by my mother. And this was my paternal grandfather, who we knew very little about. He and his wife moved from where he had been raised and she had been raised to where I was born and where my father was born and where my mother lived. And nobody knew his parents' names. I remembered his parents' names. By the time I started researching, it was like he had one sister, my father had one sister left, and she didn't recall. She said, I don't know, Papa didn't. He was a very quiet man. He didn't talk much about his folks, so she didn't know. Fortunately, without having to go, I knew his name and I knew the county he was from, but this county had more Smiths per capita than any other county, black and white, than any other county in the state of Mississippi. In fact, he had 3 Smith lines, 2 on his father's side and 1 on his mother's side. So I found this written obituary that she had saved, and I was just shocked that she still had it, and it listed his father and his mother's name. I was just overwhelmed, and it was written so well. My mother had a beautiful handwriting. This is one of the few documents I still have where she wrote this document out and someone read it at his funeral. Now, the other document, the 1895 pension letter for Carter Bowens, it was in his family Bible, which I didn't know existed. We were sitting talking with my aunt, my mother and I, and my mother said, well, Lucille, don't you have Papa's Bible? And she said, yeah, yeah. I said, wait. You got your daddy's Bible? My grandfather was born in 1873. I said, you got your daddy's Bible and nobody has ever mentioned this to me? I stopped the conversation, told my aunt, go get the Bible. And I sat there for 3 hours and went through every piece of paper that was in it. I thought we were about to leave and go home, but that turned out to be a full day of visit. And in there, I found this little letter that came from an attorney in D.C. And it was regarding a pension, and based upon the act that they recited in here, I knew it was a Civil War pension, and I became extremely excited. But it didn't give the name of the party applying for the pension. All it said was we need some additional names of officers and that kind of information. I knew it wasn't my grandfather. I didn't think it could be my great grandfather because he was born in 1820 to 25, and I thought he would have been too old to fight in the Civil War. A little more on this later. Now, these are several other documents that I found through family collections, and this is Aunt Cindy. The lady sitting in the chair is Aunt Cindy. Aunt Cindy, this was in the possession of my mother's other sister. We visited her and decided to go through her picture album, and there was this lady, and she asked my mother, do you know who this is? That's Aunt Cindy. I said, who's Aunt Cindy? That's Aunt Cindy. Well, how's Aunt Cindy related to y'all? I'm not sure. We just know this is Aunt Cindy. Her husband fought in the war. What war? Was it World War I, World War II? The war. I said, well, that still could be, was it the Spanish American war? I knew she was rather elderly. And eventually I would find out that her husband fought in the Civil War, and the couple that she lived with didn't help answer my question about which side of the family she was. I knew it was on my mother's side because this was an instance where a brother and a sister from one family married the brother and a sister from the other family. So they were connected through me through both of the husband and the wife that she lived through. So this didn't help, but eventually I would discover that she was a Humphreys. Her maiden name was Humphreys. And because they didn't know what her maiden, all they did say is Aunt Cindy. And this opened up a whole slew of information about my Humphreys line. The other piece here is a book, a paperweight that I had been researching on my mother's side, and who I thought was the slaveholder was the minister of this local church. And as soon as I mentioned the church, my aunt just reached over behind her, picked up this paperweight and gave it to me and said that I got this from Grandma. Well, Grandma was the that was the grandchild. This was her grandmother, my great grandmother, the one that I showed you initially. She was the granddaughter of the couple that I thought was this pastor of this church was a slaveholder for. So this helped confirm who their slaveholder were, because I never found it in any documentation. So that's Albert and Sarah Walters, slaveholder. Now, the second is your online resources. And this is what we're doing today. This is what we're having to use today. And the general records that you're going to use most often will start with your census records. The most recent census is 1940. And for African Americans, it goes back to 1870. And from 1940, for the federal censuses, back to 1790. These are the federal censuses for European and others. It's free at Family Search, Ancestry.com charges for it, but there are some other sites out there that have some of these census records. And then there's state and local census records that you will find at state archives, on Ancestry, on Family Search. So you always want to look at those too, depending upon the period that you're researching. The vital records, the birth, marriage, divorce, and death records, you have quite a few of those on familysearch.org, some on Ancestry, but it varies by state. Some states are very restrictive about the records that they release. Mississippi, you are not going to get a birth record free anywhere. They don't even, I don't recall, they don't even have an index. Mississippi recently was forced to release the death index, just the index, under the, under the state law, because the law said that these should be open records. And so it varied by state. So you need to research your state and see what they have, and then go to a site like Family Search or Ancestry. Marriage records are pretty prevalent out there. Divorce records more hard to come by. Death records, many states have good death records. Virginia, for instance, Arkansas, which for a long time did not allow their records, their actual records to be viewed. They're now up, the actual death records from 1914 up to 1969 are viewable on Ancestry, and they have good index that's searchable. Land records, again, online at Family Search, microfilm at county courthouses. A lot of that is now mostly at familysearch.org. That's where you're gonna find your land deed records, absolute deed records. Probate and civil court records, that's wills and estates. The early records are on Ancestry and Family Search. You won't find more recent stuff, privacy, court control, legal restrictions will keep the more recent stuff restricted. Military records and pensions, Ancestry.com, FamilySearch.org. Fold 3 is a good one. You have to be in the library to use it. If you have a library card, you can access it from home. Fold 3, really difficult site to use though. Now, these more recent wars are more difficult to find information on. For instance, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, a lot of these records have restrictions, and a lot of them, the early records for the early wars, the World War I, World War II, were destroyed in a fire in the Military Service Center in St. Louis. So you can get, there are some records available for some services. It may be Navy, I don't remember exactly, it may be Navy and Marines or Air Force, but you may be able to get those records, but there still are some restrictions, and that you may have to be a family member that's requesting them. Older wars, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the War of 1812, they're being continually digitized and uploaded. So you'll find access to many of those records, and it's continually changing. So you always want to check back. Church records, it depends upon the denomination. Catholics are best. For African Americans, if you're Catholic or Methodist, possibly. Catholics are best overall. Baptists, I don't care what religion you are, there's going to be certain limitations on the records you're going to find. The Southern Baptist Association, I think they're in, most of their records are at, God, I can't think of the name of the college in Memphis or somewhere in Tennessee, but just Google it, and they do have microfilm, and microfilm on some records can be found at Family Search. Cemeteries, Find a Grave is by far the best. They have gone to places that I never thought anybody would go to, and indexed and taken pictures of those graves and put them on their site. Immigration records, Ancestry, Family Search are going to be your primary sources. Some of them, depending upon the time period, have now been released. Finally, family history, state and local histories, Family Search, and online digital libraries like Internet Archives Heidi Trust. For African American related records, the Freedmen Bureau records, the field offices are the most important. They are now digitized and indexed at Family Search. Freedmen's Bank records are online at Family Search, digitized and indexed. The slave narratives, you have some that are on the Library of Congress website that are indexed and digitized, but the majority are not. And those are the ones that are now, we have, for instance, the full set, I think is 40 books in the collection, and there's a good index for it. So we do have that. Union Civil War pension files, they're coming up, they're being digitized. Hopefully they'll be on at the National Archives, and hopefully they will be either on Fold 3 or the National Archives website. But now you have to write to the National Archives to get those. And Confederate pension files are usually at state archives and libraries, and some of them have been digitized or up online. Some of them may be on Ancestry or Family Search, but some states still have them at the state archives. And for African Americans, believe it or not, you really want to check those, because I've been doing DNA research, and I found some of the people I've been researching that were that eventually were awarded Confederate pensions because they went along as body servants, or were, you know, considered engineers digging ditches, stuff like that. And they ended up getting pensions. Touch online research. Okay, census and probate records. This is the 1880 census of Lincoln County, Mississippi. And you remember I told you my grandfather my mother wrote this obituary, and we didn't know anything about who his parents were other than what was found in that obituary. Well, this would lead me to here. This is my grandfather, Willis, and he's in the home of his parents, Warren Smith and Ann. And next to them is his grandparent, Henry Smith, and his wife, Clora A., which was his second wife, which was not Warren's mother. That's a whole nother story. And then next to him is his father, and Willis's great-grandfather, and my third great-grandfather, Pascal Smith, who was born in Georgia. He's 80 years old. So he's born in Georgia. His wife is born in South Carolina, and well, in Mississippi, but her mother was born in South Carolina. And so with that one letter, I was able to put together, you know, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 generations living absolutely next door to each other. And as far as probate records go, African Americans will have probate records, more recent probate records, but I've often utilized them most in my slavery era research. You know, I found some probate records for my great-grandparents. My great-great-grandfather died. I think he had one, and you know, I found some others post-Civil War. But this one was important to me because it was a probate record from the slaveholder Dudley Lofton's estate. And I just mentioned Pascal, where here is Pascal. Pascal was enslaved by the Lofton family, and next to him is his father, Henry. And also they have Cade, who is listed as their grandson, and he's down here. I didn't put a thing to it, right there. So I was confirmed that this was my ancestor. This was my ancestor Pascal, and his son and his grandson. And I learned that the name of a daughter and another son, grandchild, that I didn't know existed. Here's some, we're still in touch now. We're still online researching. Here's some land records that I found on my family. This is a patent certificate from 1882 from the Bureau of Land Management. And if you go to their site and search it, just Google Bureau of Land Management. And if they were awarded a federal patent on federal land, then they would receive a certificate from the government that they now own that land. So Eli Hislam is my second great grandfather on my father's side, his mother's grandfather. And here he had applied for this, and I also sent in to the National Archives to get the paper file. And it indicated that he had forgot that once he moved on it, that he had to complete the paperwork. There's very good information in here, extremely good information in here. There are affidavits from neighbors and people like that that will help you. We have a good site here at Clayton called, oh my God, it just went blank. The History Geo, I'm sorry, History Geo. And it's the first landowners project. So if you have access to that at any of your local libraries, you really want to get there, because you could then order those files and those patent files, those application files, and they'll have a lot of information in them. Now, the other one is my second great grandmother, and you can't see the name, Cloanne Smith. And she applied, which was amazing to me, for a patent on land in probably around 1884. This was striking for any woman to do, let alone a Black woman, a former enslaved female. So she applied for the patent and was eventually awarded the patent, moved on to the land. According to her, her and her 8 children, well, she did fib a little bit there. The 8 children were grown and out on their own. They weren't necessarily on there, but she did have some of her grandchildren with her. These are some other documents, military records. This is a Civil War pension card from my great-grandfather, Thomas Boynes. And like I said, these documents that I found through talking to my family, the pension letter led me to these documents. This is Thomas Boynes pension card. This is a World War draft registration card from my grandfather, Carter Boynes, from 1917. I already knew a lot about him, but I never had seen a picture of him or knew exactly what he looked like, other than the descriptions that my mother would give me. And what was striking to me on the back, they'd tell you the person's build, height, that kind of thing. He was tall and slender, which is just like my brother and 2 of my mother's brothers. I had always wondered where they got the height from. The other one is a Civil War pensions application from my great-grandmother, Harriet Boynes Warmington, where my great-grandfather was the one, the 40-year-old, he was born in 1820, 1860, he would have been about 40, that he did fight in the Civil War. And here in this application, she mentions, because she was filing after he had passed, she mentions when he died. She also mentions her maiden name of Warmington, which I had no clue of. And she mentioned the name of the slaveholder because they were married at his place. And the most striking thing to me was that she said that my great-grandfather had been married in Virginia before he was sold in Virginia and brought to Mississippi. I always had an idea that he probably had, because I think when they started their family, they were both not in their 20s, but probably in their 30s, the early 30s, mid 30s. So I always suspected that there was something more to this story. So I'm using DNA to try to fill some of the gaps on that. So that's touching again. And the books and the microprint, everything you find online, you can find in books and microprint at a library, local library, college or university library, historical society. You also want to consider federal, state, and local archives and repositories and county courthouses. Now, I know I'm not a person who likes to drive. I do not like to drive, but I am waiting until the Mississippi Archives reopens, because I haven't been home in quite a while, and there's some information that I'm dying to get at that I found through further research that may help me confirm some additional information. And you'll find the same type of records. They just, you'll find in book form many times more indexes and abstracts of the original records, but you still have to go to the actual record groups themselves to try to find the original documents. you know, the family histories, the Bibles, the personal and business papers, many of those may not be digitized. They may still be at those repositories and libraries. Special collections, for instance, for African Americans, the records of the antebellum Southern plantations, they're still on microfilm only. So you cannot access those, even though they're owned by the family history library, they won't digitize them. They have restrictions on them. So the third grouping is, once you've done as much as you can do online, actually try to get to some of these repositories, libraries, research libraries, to see what additional information you may be able to supplement. Now, cite. I think that's a pretty clear. That's pretty clear. You know, I think oftentimes we don't use our cite when we're doing our research to our benefit, because our information is right there. We're just looking all over it because we're not focusing, because we're not, you know, utilizing what we have to, you know, discover new information. We're lucky enough to find these documents, but we don't go through them with a fine-tooth comb. So you want to take whatever document, census records especially, communities, wherever your ancestor is on a page in the census, go 10, 15 pages either side of them and just get to know that neighborhood, especially the 1870 census for African Americans and any other census for anybody else. You want to really dig deep. You want to look at those names and that community. You want to feel as if you're walking, that you almost feel as if you're walking through that community. Look at each document or piece of information with an eye for detail. I mean, you want to look at every household. Where were they born? Do you see names that appear consistently of the children that seem to on that page, or over and over, that kind of unique? Maybe my great-grandmother's name was Caledonia. Well, if you see 4 or 5 people in 5 or 6 pages of that family with that name Caledonia, and that name is also in your family household, you want to consider that as a clue. You want to use a holistic approach to what you're researching. You want to research the whole thing, the whole document, not just that page that you're on. And you always want to compare and contrast your information. Always go back and look at it again. So cite is very important. To me, it's right up there with the listening, excuse me, the listening and the touch. I know you may not go so much with me on that, on the smell aspect, and we'll get to the taste in a minute, so I'll see how you follow me on that. But you always want to look at this stuff very, very closely. I can guarantee you that if you look again, you may find something you're missing. This is a census page, and a lady came into the library and she was doing some research on looking for her, and it was hidden there in plain sight from census to census. She just didn't look closely enough. She was looking for her I think this was her great-grandmother, Lucille. And Lucille was the daughter of Sam Wells and Claudia, but she went to 1910 and she looked in the household, and of course Lucille was at that time she was 8, no, this is 1920, she was 18, so she went back to 1910, so she should be 8. And she says, well, what happened to her? She's not in the household in 1910. I looked at the page, and one household above her is Lucille Wells in the home of her grandparents. And she just refused to look beyond that house. If she wasn't there, what had happened to her? Well, she's as close as in her living with her grandparents, and that opens up an entire new line of research for her. So this is Sam was on the same page, and Lucille was living a couple of houses up with her grandparents. Now, taste is it is what you may have a little difficulty following me on, but I use that as the DNA connection. You know, we use our taste, our saliva, our spit, whatever you want to call it, when we send in for our DNA test, or swabs. Is always something dealing with the taste, our taste function. So it's like, do you have a taste for new challenges? When your research reaches the end of your paper trail, and for me that had happened, I was not going to be able to do as much research. There was no more I could follow paper-wise. And so I decided to, you know, finally get on the DNA bandwagon. I was a little skeptical at first. And I'm not going to go through the 3 different types of tests, although autosomal is the one I always suggest people do because it tests all of your family lines. And the 4 major test providers, if you just Google major test providers, you'll find those. I do recommend Ancestry, although I'm not really happy with Ancestry because they have more people tested than anybody else. Now the DNA broke down some brick walls for me. My great-grandparents, the ones that fought in the Civil War, were born between 1825 to 1835. And I think 1820 to 1835. And they were both born in Virginia, and I had not been able to identify any collateral relatives or anyone other than my grandfather's family, you know, his children, his descendants, one of his sisters. So I had no idea who their other family were, where they had come from in Virginia. So it was through DNA that I discovered 2 potential siblings of either my great-grandfather or my great-grandmother. I can't really tell which, but these people are all matching my siblings, myself, and a maternal first cousin. And the common connection is that they were all born in Virginia. One gentleman, Carter Robinson, my middle name is Carter. My grandfather's name was Carter, was born in 1820 in Virginia. Another one was Easter. The husband, I don't know who he was to this particular line. She's born in 1825, and in one place says Virginia. So that helped me break down a brick wall and at least identify some potential siblings, if not my second great grandparents who would be their shared ancestor. And this is, of course, one of my greatest DNA finds is a connection to Africa for me. And for you, that may be someone you're matching in England or Wales or Scotland, Germany. And Marie is from the Gambia. And what was amazing to me, Marie was my 4th cousin. We share 29 centimorgans across 3 segments, and 3rd to 4th great grandparents. And I was somewhat skeptical about this match at first until my brother matched her also, and he matched her 17 centimorgans. And so somewhere between 3rd and 5th great grandparents, we share that common ancestry. And this is my greatest find of all, Moll, my 5th great grandmother. And she's my pride and inspiration. She outlived 7 slaveholders and possibly would end up living in 3 states. This is the first document I found her in 1770 when she was about 10 years old in Edgecombe County, North Carolina. And this is the last document I find her in 1837 when the last slaveholder that died that I can document her through. And like I said, she outlived 7 slaveholders. So she's my pride and absolute inspiration for her to have had such resilience and strength. So in conclusion, you want to talk to others and really listen to what they have to say. Does your oral tradition, history and tradition pass the smell test? Listen to your instincts there. Hands-on, touch everything within your reach and beyond. Carefully look at everything that you can find, analyze, compare and contrast. And if you have a taste for new challenges and unexpected discoveries, take a DNA test and enjoy your journey. And I thank you for your patience, and I thank everyone for taking our time to listen to me talk about something that I am very, very passionate. And I hope you will start your journeys if you haven't. And I hope this will help some of you at least guide others in a direction that will encourage them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Going to take over and put a little information up here for everybody. You can take a little break and then we'll have a couple questions for you if that's okay, Frank.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay. Just to remind everybody that the handout is available. You can go to www.houstonlibrary.org/Clayton. If you see the big red arrow pointing down on the screen right now, that's the events and exhibits card. That's where you want to click. That will take you to an area that looks like this box on the right, where you can see program and exhibit handouts. The handouts for the first 3 presentations in the Clayton Library Presents series are available there. Still, they are in PDF form. You can go in, you can get sometimes some extra information, links you might have missed, that sort of thing. You also have access to the Clayton Library Friends calendar of events. And if you look closely at the top there, you can see where it says HPL calendar of events. You can go in and you can find the links for upcoming events. I'm going to go over some things we're going to have. October is Family History Month around the country. So we are going to have a number of events available. Let me call that screen up. If it goes, there we go. Upcoming programs that we're going to have starting on October 2nd. We're going to have the Leeds method, identifying common ancestors with DNA match clustering. That's by our own Dana Leeds. On the 9th of October, we're going to have Researching Court Records. Chief Deputy District Clerk of Galveston County, Doran Danner Glenn, is going to be hosting that for us. And then on the 16th of October, Using DNA to Identify Enslaved Ancestors. That's going to be presented by LaBrenda Garrett Nelson. On 10/23, the 23rd of October, we're going to have Native American Research, and that's going to be put on by Paulo Stewart Warren. Now on 10/31, almost the last day of October, we're going to have one called Medical Genealogy, defining obscure medical terms used by our ancestors, and that's being put on by our Clayton staffer here, Irene Walters. She's one of our librarians here. And then because we're having so much fun, we're going to extend Family History Library Month into November a little bit. November 20th, we're going to have a presentation on Vivid Pics, using Vivid Pics for photographs by Rick Voigt, who is, I believe, the CEO or the head of Vivid Pics. So that should be interesting, a bit of technology that we're able to do. So if you do need to contact us, unfortunately, we are not open for visits at the time, but we are doing research and lookups for people. You can call or email us. You can see on the right-hand side of your screen, there's a phone number there. We're going to be answering the phones Monday through Friday, 10 to 5. If you want to give us a written email, that's fine as well. We have that available at cla.reference@houstontexas.gov. That's cla.reference@houstontexas.gov. And just a reminder that we are available to do presentations for your group. If you have a genealogy or family history group or a local history group, we do make our presentations available for use as well. You just have to provide the Zoom platform, and then we can get together, we can do something with that. So, Frank, are you ready for some more, some questions from our audience?
Sure.
Okay. Let me see if I can figure out how to do that. Okay. Well, let's see. While I'm figuring out how to do the questions, let me just go ahead and read you the first question, which is going to come to us from, oh no, I can't get to it. Just a second. It went very well in rehearsal. Okay. So the first question that we had in our chat room came from Kathleen Evans. She asked fairly early on, what county were you talking about, Frank, when you were talking about you're looking for Smiths in a certain county?
Oh, Lincoln County, Mississippi. Lincoln County. That's where my
Lincoln
grandfather
County.
was from, Lincoln County, Mississippi.
Okay, good, thank you. Now, Jessica Collins was asking, when you were trying to come up with the university in Alabama, were you thinking of Samford at Birmingham, Alabama for Southern Baptist Records?
Yes, I think that is correct. Stanford is the one I couldn't remember. And the Southern Baptist Historical Association too I think there's a Southern Baptist Historical Association in that one's in Tennessee somewhere that has a lot of microfilm collections from Baptist groups.
Okay, now I will take just a moment to say that Natalie McLean very graciously posted several links to some of these archives in the chat. They are you can download the chat for this presentation, and you can get those links. She posted a link to the Southern Baptist Historical Library Archives and another one, I believe, to Methodist Archives. So that would be very helpful. Thank you, Natalie. Now we have a question from Lynn Trellis Gaines asking, are there any Cuban records available anywhere? And I think I know the answer to that, but go ahead.
Yeah, there are some Cuban records available. Family Search will have some. We have some here, very few, but probably the majority of them will be available on familysearch.org. If you and you can go specifically to the records by click on Browse All Published Collections on the main search page, and then it may be under Caribbean. I don't know if it's under Cuba directly, but they have a lot of the countries listed there. We have a few here. You may try the Cuban archives if they have an archives, if anything has been done there. Did you have anything else, Mitch?
Just a couple. Are you okay? Or do you need to go?
No, go ahead.
Oh, you're talking about Cuban records? Any other
Yeah.
Cuban records? Oh, yeah. I was just going to mention the Cuban collection that we have here because
Yeah.
there was just recently a presentation on that.
Hmm.
And Lynn, you can go ahead and email us at cla.reference@houstontexas.gov, and we'll be glad to send you a listing of links if that would be helpful to you. Okay, so from Karen Branneman, we had the question, she's asking about land records. How do we know what person is listed in a land record when there may be 4 generations with the same name? That's a big problem.
Oh, yeah, that is a big problem. Basically, you go through the land records, pull out all of the people with that names during the time periods, and first you want to determine who would have been able to be buying and purchasing land for that particular time. You know, as newer generations started to come in, you want to, go to census records and try to differentiate between who's in the census at that time. You want to look at the actual records themselves as to who's witnessing the documents, who are they selling the land to, especially witnesses. Witnesses can prove to somewhat confirm or connections to different people, because some of those witnesses may be neighbors. So you may be able to put them in a specific location in the county. If these are neighbors and people that they are dealing with, then it may differentiate between another person with the same name that is in another part of the county that may be in the deed records. And you always want to look at the location of the land that the legal descriptions of the land that they're either buying or selling. Where is this land located? Try to find some maps, because if you have these people there, you have a couple of them with the same name at the same time. You have to find every means possible to try to differentiate them. Who's signing as witnesses? Who are they buying from? Who are they selling from? This will tell you about location. You want to go to the any kind of probate records when they died, if you can find out when they died, who's listed in the probate records. That's just a few of them, but it's a lot of it, especially with deed records, is location. Where's the land? And if it's in the same area, then there may be some connection. Now, if you see some other folks with the same last name as them, but don't show up in these other people with the same name, then you may be able to link that particular individual to those individuals that are, signing as witnesses on their particular transactions.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Now, let's see. I have another comment. This is more of like a comment from Deborah Gammon. She says, "Who's in Edgecombe County?" She's from Edgecombe County.
They were connected to the Bryants, the Smiths. This was where the slaveholder came from, was Edgecombe County. His name was Britton Bryan. He was connected to Bryans. He was connected to Smiths. I can't think of the Smith guy's name. They were connected to Sessoms, um, um, some other names. In fact, one of my fifth great grandmother's daughters in 1870, she lived to be 92. She was 92 in 1870 in Louisiana, where the slaveholder that owned my fifth great grandmother went after his mother died. She's listed as a Sessoms. She lists her name as Sessoms. So those were some of the names.
Okay. Do you feel like taking some more questions, Frank?
Oh, sure. I mean,
Sure. There are a lot of congratulations in here for you. You'll get a chance to go through and read them all when we're done. But I wanted to point out, Terry Meeks said, great presentation with a new perspective. Really appreciated all of the African-American examples, just to know that they're out there to be found. Okay, so we do have Sue wanted me to remind everybody that the presentations that we mentioned earlier, coming up, especially in October, they're all 2 p.m. Central Daylight Time, the same as this. Okay, and then lots of congratulations here. I'm gonna scroll down. A lot of questions were asked after we started doing this. Okay, I have a question here from Deborah Grant. Where is the best place to look for a picture of an ancestor that served in World War II?
Ooh, World War II. You know, you might try, if there are pictures, regimental pictures, pictures or something like that, through the branch of service that they were associated with, see if there any the location that they were from. If, for instance, if they were from say Claiborne County, Mississippi, there may be some World War, you said two veteran sites that may have pictures. Two. You want to look up veterans sites, World War II veterans associations and groups in your local area where they may have been from, because sometimes they would get those pictures. Now, as far as a broader platform, I don't know. I really don't know. You may find pictures of regiments and stuff like that if you could pick them out on the different services with the different services, Army, Navy, if you can identify the regiment or that they were with. That's the only other thing I can think of. Just Google their name and put in World War II veteran, see if anything comes up. The ones we had from my family. I mean, we have a good number of the World War II. My mother has pictures of 2 or 3 of her brothers, but they were in the family. I've never found any anywhere else.
Okay. Now I have a question here from Carolyn Francis. She says that early on in the presentation, you showed a slide with a list of books we could use in our research. Is that list of books in the handout, Frank?
A list of books? I don't think I had a list of.
Oh,
you mean the type books by country and stuff like that?
So.
Yeah, I didn't have a list of titles of books. These were books. Yeah, it's in the handout. It's different categories of books, microprint that you might run up on. Indexes and abstracts. And I didn't specifically mention any books. Now, as far as research guides, you can just Google genealogy research guides, and as I found out, the Internet Archive has a lot of genealogy reference books, research guides that they have that you can actually download from there, or your public library, local library.
Okay, let's see what else we have here. I have a G. Smith is asking, how can we view this presentation again? I think at this time the plan is to post these online, but that has not been worked out yet. So
Mitch, I answered that that's exactly right. I answered that in the.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay.
No, that's okay. It's just farther down. So yeah, that's exactly right. We're working on putting them up on a YouTube channel. The answer in the chat I said is just continue to go back to that same page that we have where our handouts are, and we'll have links. Right. Okay. All right. I'm signing off, you guys. Thanks to you guys.
Okay.
We'll have a good week.
Thank you, Sue. Have a good trip. Okay, Frank, from Joe Collins.
My cousin.
Yeah, you know what he says? He says, "Great job, cuz."
My cousin.
Susan Davenport asked, "Do we need to register for each program?" Susan, yes, you do need to go on a link there. You'll get an email registering you for the event, and I believe you'll get a reminder email right before the event as well, so that you can make sure and not forget about it, and you'll have all the information you need to get on. Yeah, Sue did answer that question as well. Okay, so I have a question from April M. Frazier. She asked, Frank, you mentioned that you are now the family historian. Are there younger people in your family that are also doing genealogy work?
Yeah, fortunately, I spoke to one younger cousin last night on my father's side, and we talked for about 2 hours, and he was so interested, and it was so inspiring to just sit down and talk with somebody who really wanted to know the stories. On my mother's side, yeah, I can't really think of anybody. I have some information from pictures, portraits of enslaved ancestors. I really don't know what I'm going to do with them. I'm a little stressed about that, but at least hopefully eventually some of these folks will come along. You know, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when you're younger, you don't have the real time to invest. You know, I'm single, I was never married, so it was always easier for me to do. But hopefully as they grow older, they will become more interested.
That seems to be the trend, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Now I have a comment here from Jamacetta Hammonds. Oh no, she's talking to Carolyn Francis. She was talking to Carolyn Francis, I guess, in the chat, saying, "I have Francis ancestors in Houston and Guadalupe County, Texas, and Bexar County, Texas." So Carolyn Francis, there's an email address here for you in the chat if you want to check that out, if you haven't seen that, from Jamacetta Hammonds. Yeah, this is, everybody gets together in the chat.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
one big party, genealogy party. Let's see. Oh, Nick Chimino very helpfully posted a link to, it looks like a Lisa Louise Cook's website. It's called about finding family history in World War II yearbooks.
Okay.
So that seems
That's
to be
really great.
a
Yeah,
good
I didn't know
reference
about
there
that
from
one.
Nick.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's good, and that will stay in the chat. That'll be available in the chat. Well, it looks like Carolyn Francis did get in touch with Jamacetta Hammond, so that's good. That's good. And then somebody else is Jesse Williams is talking to Deborah Grant in the chat, asking if she's tried the Buffalo Soldiers Museum. So let's see. And also another from Karen Branneman says, "Thank you, Franklin. Very interesting and informative presentation. A new way to look at research." So that seems to be the last of the questions that we had. Let me go ahead and put up the slides again, just so everybody can see them. Let me get this ready to go, and then we'll do that. I know Frank is anxious to get off the screen.
No.
There we go. Of course, I didn't do it right. So here we go. So the upcoming programs, again, as you can see, they're on various parts of the month during October, because October is Family History Month. This is the list with the 2nd of October, the 9th of October, the 16th of October, the 23rd, the 30th. I think I may have said the 31st earlier. I had Halloween on my mind. It's on the 30th of October for the medical genealogy presentation. And then another one in November put on by Vivid Pics. Information about all those, as well as registration information. Oh, where'd it go? What'd I do? There we go. Oh, okay. Forgive me. I know not what I'm doing. Just a moment. There we go. Okay. So the handout information is down at the lower left of the slide here. You go to www.houstonlibrary.org/Clayton. You click on the events card, and that will give you information about upcoming presentations, as well as access to handouts to the previous presentations. You do have to register for these presentations. You go in and the same way that you registered for this, you just go in and you click on the link, and it sends you, asks you your name and a little bit of information, then you fill it out and you get an email back. And again, once again, just to plug the reference email, it's on the right-hand side of your screen. It's cla.reference@houstontex.gov. And that will come directly to us. And we have our crack team of genealogy commandos working to get those things out. I did see one person in the chat say that they'd asked for a magazine reference and haven't gotten it yet. So we'll make sure that we look at that and see what the situation is, and at least give you a reply. Okay. And again, you can also call us with, these are with small requests. Please don't call and ask us to find all of your ancestors back to Charlemagne, because we're not going to be able to do that. But we do handle small requests, lookups, limited amount of page copies, things like that.
And if anyone has any questions, you know, about African American research, especially 1870 and earlier during enslavement, just call and ask for Frank. I'd be more than happy. Or you've got a brick wall and, you know, you're trying to get back to 1870. I'd be more than happy to assist anyone. That, you know, I just call and ask for Frank. I'm usually here.
That's true. And more than likely, if you call and you give us a question like that, we're going to just hand the phone to Frank anyway. So about a week from, I believe it's a week from today, we'll have the Leeds method with Dana Leeds. And
good. If you're thinking about doing DNA, you really need to tune in to that one.
I remember you talking about this when it first came out. It was all the rage. It's still very useful. I've used it as well. So
yes.
We're all going to learn a lot about a simple way to work with DNA. Okay, well, I messed that one up. Okay. Well, that's it for
Thank
today.
you, everyone. I appreciate you showing up and taking your time to be with us today.
Okay, and that's going to wrap it up.